Let's talk about what happens when something goes wrong in your Grasshopper file. Grasshopper uses a color coding system to give feedback about possible errors and warnings in a definition. There are three possible color states for components and parameters. Gray signifies that something is correct with no warnings or errors. In our example here, the number parameter is defined locally as 25.2, and that's all it needs to function properly. Likewise, each of these point components are defined locally with locally defined inputs, and those in turn pass their outputs to the line component, which is expecting 2 points as its input. Orange stands for a warning. Algorithms with warnings may still function, but you need to be very careful to check and understand why you're getting a warning if one comes up. Most likely, a warning code is generated when input data has simply not been defined. In the example, the number parameter is empty, as are the input points for the empty line component. So Grasshopper is trying to warn us that these parameters and components aren't holding the information that they're expected to hold. Finally, red means that there's an error in a component's inputs. This is often caused by a mismatch in the type of data expected. In our example, the line component showing an error state in red is expecting input data in the form of points, which would have an x, y, and z value. And instead, we're connecting it with numbers, which just have one value. Compare this to the correct line component, which has points as its inputs. When you do encounter an error message or a warning, you can find more detailed information about what's going wrong through the contextual menu. So we can right-click and select Runtime Warnings, and I can see Grasshopper is telling me input parameter A failed to collect data, input parameter B failed to collect data. So on this line component, that makes perfect sense because we haven't defined any data for either of the inputs. Similarly, on the line component that's showing us a warning, we can look at runtime errors, and it's saying data conversion failed from number to point. Since we're just feeding this component individual numbers, it's not really possible for that component to convert those individual numbers into point information, which would have those three X, Y, and Z components. So if you pay attention to the color codes and the errors and warning messages in your Grasshopper definition, you should be able to get some help when things inevitably go wrong.